Thanks very much for having me. So I'm Jen, I'm architect and co-founder of O'Donnell Brown. We are a community-driven practice based here in Glasgow, and it's really great to get the chance to open up this evening celebrating your 5th birthday. We, being this wonderful bunch here, do what we do because we care about making socially and environmentally responsible architecture. We're passionate about the impact of our designs and how they can make a positive impact on human lives. And so material choice and use matters, and it has a critical role in these endeavours. And these are some snapshots from some of the projects that I'll talk about today. We know that natural materials have a positive impact on human well-being and the environment. Our surroundings matter, so the materials that we touch every day impact our moods. They can spark awe, wonder, creativity. And I love this shot from inside the Pantheon. So even when it's 35 degrees outside, those really thick stone walls, you know, that material, it moderates temperature. It's a physical as well as a mental transition when you enter the space. And the intangible materials have an impact on us too. In this instance, the light coming through, the rain, and that connection to the elements. And so at O'Donnell Brown, our work is centred on the belief that reusing existing buildings, sites, their materials is the most sustainable approach to the future development of our cities. And we built our practice and work for London Borough of Tower Hamlets. Some of the projects are on the screen just now. And we developed a specialism in working with really tricky, difficult school sites, existing buildings, introducing natural materials and often timber in quite hard settings to create inspiring learning spaces. So I'm going to talk for the next 10 minutes or so about use and reuse of materials in our work, focusing on timber and natural materials with the odd detour, in recognition of your wooden anniversary today, from small-scale pavilions to Scotland's largest cultural project and ending on a bit of furniture. And so small-scale pavilion to kick it off. So from our work in London with schools, we were familiar with this. So outdoor learning spaces, sort of quite grim, hard. It really bothered us. We wanted to do something about it. We were struggling to get education work when we moved the practice up to Scotland at the time, and so we put our ideas together for outdoor learning environments and ploughed them into our first self-initiated project, and that's a key part of who we are as a practice. We started to sketch out ideas for an outdoor classroom, and we tested these ideas through model making. The idea of a simple timber structure, which would be adaptable to different users, a fully demountable kit of parts. And so the modules that are at the bottom of this slide that we were testing through model making, the idea would be that they could be coloured in different ways so that different users could make it, you know, characteristic for them. And some more models and sketches to imagine those scenarios. And so key to being able to reuse this structure were bolted connections. We wanted to create something that was pure and functional in its form. We used just 3 lengths of basic C24 timber to optimize the material use and to reduce waste. And so really, I think the simplicity hopefully comes across. We wanted it to be adaptable, demountable, really, really functional, and have this sort of rhythmic geometry and design. And then we made it as a studio supported by Bernardo's Works. They're an employment programme for young people within the studio garden, and it was a whole team effort, and this is it complete. It had a real community function within the south side of Glasgow. And we continued that thinking into more pavilions. They multiplied. There's a family of them. I'll talk briefly about one of them. It was a collaboration with the artist Kate B. Robertson. This pavilion and outdoor learning building is located in Strathclyde Park, just outside of Glasgow. And Kate designed this modular timber rain screen. So again, using timber, she was working with a local primary school to come up with the pattern that you can see on the screen here. And the idea would be that when the sun and light moved through the pavilion, the shadows would mimic the water movement on the loch in Strathclyde Park. And circularity was again at the heart of this project. The pavilion was to be fully demountable, and we reused materials and used renewable materials where possible. So the roof material was actually donated from a local building site. There was a school being extended locally, and we were able to save some of the roofing material from the skip and use it on the pavilion. And also the lanterns that you can see here, surprisingly, they're parts of mobile phones. So when Kate, the artist that we collaborated with, when you deconstruct a mobile phone, there's 10 bits of different types of sort of paper, and some of it's prismatic. So Kate organised these and came up with this pattern that would sort of create a rainbow in the floor of the pavilion when the sunlight comes through it. And then progressing that thinking when breathing new life into the high street. This is a before and after of a fit-out project on Sucky Hall Street, again in Glasgow City Council, for Sprig. They are a business that do really great salads and good coffee. And so we started out again with sketching to describe ideas for the transformation of the space and starting with research. So Macintosh actually studied within the building within McClellan Works at one point, and we drew inspiration from this, exploring datums, vertical elements, and you'll see sort of direct references to the recent pavilion experience and using modular timber elements to define and hold the space within the cafe. And this is it completed and looking busy and vibrant. And so those datums wrap the space, and the new frame structure holds that space and defines it. And we also designed the seating bays and waiting areas in quite what we hope is a carefully crafted way with a nod to those Macintosh references. And again, the structure is fully demountable with circularity in mind. It's been hugely popular, and we hope that the use of natural and softer material makes people linger a while, maybe sit down, slow down, and I think our client hopes spend a bit more money on salad as well. So building on the reuse and regeneration work in London, briefly about New Olympia House. It's a project also in Glasgow in the East End. It's an existing 2-storey red sandstone building. It's in Bridgeton. It's for Clyde Gateway. And here, working with original materials is helping to tell the story of the building's past. So, and that's when you can actually see them. This is how we found it. So, I mean, the existing building, it had suspended ceilings, plasterboard partitions, windows that were blocked up. You got no real sense of the story of that building. And so we started by studying the existing building to understand that story as a Salvation Army hall with its big open spaces, lots of natural light, the complete opposite of how it was when we found it. And also to understand its materiality. So we managed to negotiate a strip out works ahead of time with the client and find that time within the programme to physically reveal what was behind the plasterboard and plastic surfaces to support decision making and really understand the historic fabric, the timber roof structure, the timber paneling, the brick walls, and work with what's there and complement it as well. And on the outside, that was complemented by repairing a gap in the street. We tested ideas to create a positive addition. This is the entrance beacon in model form, and it had a real sculptural quality to highlight the new accessible entrance. And this is a photo of how it looks now on the street, the entrance beacon and the repaired stone facade. And internally, we were looking to reveal the original features. So with the south elevation of the building, the street-facing elevation of that main space is the focus once again. So the light was able to stream in, and where we had run out of original salvaged timber for the panelling, we introduced a painted datum to reference that part of the building's story. And you can see there light flooding in from unblocked windows, and really showcasing the original building's materials. And it's already let and has that new lease of life. And so recently we've been formalising that analysis of existing building materials through material audits. Now I'm aware that in the southeast that's more common practice, and that there's a planning requirement for pre-demolition audits in London, for example, but less so in Scotland, and we've been taking that thinking forward in this project. It's a £15 million cultural project that we won by competition a short while ago now, and it was ourselves, O'Donnell Brown, in collaboration with White Architecture and Ecust, who are the UK's first health and wellbeing consultant. And this project is for the Crichton Trust and the Scottish Women's Institute to create a new centre for learning, reflection and activity. And this is where it's located on the Crichton Estate, which is a really special place near Dumfries in the Scottish borders. The whole site is a conservation area. There are 26 listed buildings in the site. And the Crichton was founded in the early 1800s as a psychiatric hospital, and it was a pioneering place where connections to landscape and nature were used to enhance patient well-being. And today the estate's managed by the Crichton Trust, and it's a vibrant business and academic community. But you can see some of the original sandstone buildings there. And this is the site for the project itself, the Merrick Building. It's a 1960s red-brown brick building. It's a former laundry, which contrasts completely with the other buildings on the site in terms of its form, which you can see there. Its siting, it's a bit of a block on the site, and also its materiality. It's not made of Lochaberg sandstone. But we thought that it was honest and utilitarian in its appearance with its exposed structure. And the brief's initial solution actually was to get rid of this building completely. But we felt that obviously retention and the carbon saving from retaining it was our first consideration, and that changed the narrative. And so one of our first tasks was to carry out a material mapping exercise. And our starting point, if you can sort of see on the slide, it is quite small, but on the left-hand side is materials that are local to the Crichton campus context, and on the right is the existing building. But we started with low carbon, natural and locally available materials, and we're combining that with the reuse of the Merrick building, the existing structure and the bones of it, with an ambition to provide the lowest carbon solution. So prioritising natural materials to reduce the building's embodied carbon. And then on the right, the existing building, looking to keep the existing concrete frame, reuse as many of the existing bricks as possible, and the steel trusses, and generally just reusing, retaining and recycling. And so as part of that analysis, we've been working with Material Index. They're a company based in the southeast, to get an understanding and to catalogue the existing building. And so starting to set out the existing components, and then getting more granular to help with decision making. And so this slide sets out a sort of linear example of how they work. So it begins with site visits to measure the key components, and then they do what they call an asset capture where they're on site. So they're basically photographing all of the different parts of the building and then uploading it onto the Material Index platform, which is kind of an app with key information. And then there's an analytics output. But really what that is a register or a catalogue of all of the different building components within the Merrick building. Then generated alongside that is key circularity figures and a pre-demolition audit report. And as I said, that it's something that's a lot more commonplace in the southeast, and particularly London, less so in Scotland. And this slide, which is probably quite difficult to read at the back, but effectively what it's doing is it's showing that granular level of detail. So on that interface, the materials of that building are broken down into external walls, windows and external doors, and internal walls and partitions. And under each heading, again, you know, it's logging that data for each of the materials. So, you know, where it's located in the building, it's carbon data, it's designated pathway. What that means is, will it be recycled on site? Will it be recycled off site? Or will it go to waste? And what's amazing about this is it really is helping us with our decision-making process. So materials with higher emissions are identified, for example, the bricks, and then we can think about, well, how are we going to reuse them on site? And that's a bit more of the output from their interface. So you can see that they're splitting up the materials of the building in weight terms. So we can see that the concrete frame in the top left diagram, you know, it's a big weighty part of the building. And again, these sort of quite basic graphics are helping us make decisions, but they're all coming from that cataloguing of data. And some diagrams of how it comes together on site. I'll move through it quite quickly. So the headline here is that we're retaining the structure, the materials that form the bones of the proposal, and at the heart of the building, that's where that existing building will be located. And we see real beauty in that existing concrete frame. You might have to look quite hard to see it, but it is there. And the steel trusses and value in their retention. And so the impact of the Material Index material audits that we've been doing is that we're now increasing the amount of that existing building that we're retaining. And that cataloguing is helping us make that argument with our client. and this is the view of the entrance. And briefly to touch on internally, those existing materials will sit alongside locally sourced timber from the Galloway forest and earth-based construction. We were drawn to earth not only for planet health benefits, but for people health benefits. The concept for this project was to create a building that was set into and made of its landscape. We understand that millions of tons of excavated soil goes to landfill each year at a cost to the environment, society, and to the client. And the ambition of the project was to create walls that are made of rammed earth initially, but that might end up being earth and fibre walls using excavated soil ahead of more carbon-intense materials. And the technical work for that is ongoing at the moment. And I'm going to finish briefly with a piece of furniture that this isn't the piece of furniture, but for context, this is the Take a Bow Development Centre in Kilmarnock. The project is a refurbishment and extension of this brute of a 1970s community facility for the Take a Bow Development Trust. And so that the existing building you can see from the photograph is quite hard, and we're looking to turn it into a low-carbon, multifunction hub, enhancing youth theatre provision in the area, learning and intergenerational programmes. And so there's been quite a bit of material testing. I mean, this project, it's just about, I'm looking towards the project architect who's here, but it's about to complete on site. The design, again, maximises reuse and prioritises sustainable interventions within a modest budget. And again, we're looking to introduce natural materials and timber, again, to soften the new frontage to the building and give it a real facelift. And this is an elevation of how it's going to look when it completes next month. But the reason for including it today, and to end on this, is that material reuse is an increasing priority on all of our retrofit projects in the studio. And building on the recent work that I just described for the Crichton project, we've been thinking about how we can pull materials now across O'Donnell Brown projects or across projects that are adjacent to us. And so most recently, what that's meant is these are photos of the inside of one of the halls at the Take a Bow Centre. And we've collaborated with Angus Grant from Soft Studio, and he had and has repurposed some of the hardwood flooring that you can see on the right, which used to be in one of the building's hall spaces. So as part of the refurbishment, we did have to remove it to insulate the floor below. But because of the size and fixing, as is often the case, we were unable to reuse it despite wanting to. And so we facilitated their collection by Angus, who then worked his magic and skillfully turned the floorboards into a stunning one-of-a-kind chair, which is just beautiful work. But he also used the same materials salvaged from the project to create a new reception desk for our Millport Town Hall project. And so for Millport Town Hall, the client had a really limited budget for their reception desk, which is the first thing you see when you are going to walk into the building. And so we managed to use that sort of harvested material from one project to make the reception desk in another. And it's coming together. So, I mean, remarkably, all of the materials for the desk, with the exception, I think, of, I'm told, one panel of plywood has been reclaimed. And so we're excited to see that come together soon. And so I hope that the small selection of projects illustrates some of our thinking on material choice, with a focus on health and well-being, connections to nature, and use of natural materials, and at a fundamental level creates pleasant spaces where hopefully people might stay a wee bit longer. Thanks.